Welcome back, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, and this is your next story. The elevator wasn't fancy, not like the brochures had shown. Clear polycarbonate walls, exposed guide rails, a brushed metal floor, and a faint pressure change in my ears that built up fast as we dropped toward the seafloor. There was no music, no voiceover, no one talking inside the car except the hotel manager at the front, who was trying to keep things light with a half-scripted pitch about the future of deep-sea hospitality. No one laughed. People just stared through the transparent walls at the water getting darker by the second. The descent lasted about 90 seconds. I counted because there wasn't much else to do. No one had phones out. Signal was gone the second we left the barge. I glanced around once. 9 other guests in my group, all of them quiet, dressed too clean. Most looked like finance people, like me. Some had that polished coastal look, like they'd just stepped off a yacht charter. The woman to my left had perfect makeup and zero gear. She probably brought heels to the bottom of the ocean. When the car docked and the seals cycled, the floor shifted under us with a soft knock, and the outer doors parted. What I saw through the open airlock wasn't what I expected. It didn't feel like a hotel. It felt like a science station that someone had rushed to clean up the day before we arrived. Bright acrylic tunnels stretched out in 3 directions, held by dark metal ribs bolted to the seafloor framework. Fish drifted past the outer walls, but not in some organized pattern like an aquarium. It looked like we'd been dropped into a piece of ocean and sealed inside, with no real control over what passed by. A woman in coveralls and steel-toed boots waited just outside the hatch with a tablet under her arm. She didn't smile or wave, just held up a hand and pointed at the floor markers as we stepped out. She had no name tag, no uniform like the others, and no time for small talk. Later I'd learn her name was Mina Rahim, and that she was the lead systems engineer for the Abyssal Crown. At that moment, she looked like the only one in the entire operation who had any idea how it actually worked. She gave us a short, sharp set of instructions as we stepped off the elevator pad. Stay inside the marked lanes while walking the tunnels. Do not lean on the acrylic. No climbing the structural supports, even for photos. The window seals are reinforced, but surface scratches compromise the tension balance. Nobody listened. The couple ahead of me had already pulled out their phones. They stopped every few steps to take selfies with the tunnel bending behind them. The guy tried to get the woman to back up toward the curve, but she kept brushing him off and checking the light from her screen. I kept walking. The hotel manager led us down the main tunnel spine, pointing out each pod as we passed. Guest suites branched to the right. The restaurant pod split off to the left. Spa services were farther down the main axis, and the control pod sat at the far end, past a bulkhead gate that still had caution tape zip-tied to one corner. I counted 4 pods in total, not including the service dock. That one didn't get mentioned until later. When we reached the guest pod, staff met us with touch tablets and key assignments. I was in Suite 2B. The door slid open when I approached and the lighting came up automatically. The room was about what I expected. 1 bed, anchored flush to the wall, a soft-lit display panel showing looping underwater footage, and a compact bathroom unit with a locking door and a rainfall-style showerhead. It looked new, not finished, like a prototype still waiting for a design firm to dress it up. I unpacked what little I'd brought: 3 changes of clothes, a battery pack, 1 notebook, and a steel watch my brother gave me years back. I left my bag in the corner and ran water through the sink just to check the pressure. It worked. Cool, clean, no odor. Good start. Still, I didn't feel settled. I don't trust sealed buildings where I can't open a window. Dinner was scheduled for 19 o'clock. Before that, we were invited to explore. I spent the next hour walking the loop again. No one stopped me. I passed 2 staff members resetting table settings in the restaurant pod, and 1 security guy reviewing a screen near the control entrance, but no one said a word. I wasn't snooping. I just pay attention to layouts. I counted every fire extinguisher, every pressure door, and every manual override panel I could see. There weren't many. This place had the bare minimum for anything outside a technical corridor. At one point, I ended up near the service dock. The hatch was open. Inside, I saw something that actually looked engineered. A spherical white escape capsule sat in the bay on a reinforced rack, tethered to a structural cradle with 2 thick mechanical clamps and a third bracket marked with a yellow flag. Mina was standing next to it, reviewing a laminated checklist and adjusting something on a pump unit beside the capsule base. I asked her casually what the flag meant. She didn't look up right away. Then she said, "That clamp is tagged for replacement. There's a spare in the locker, but it hasn't been swapped yet. It's scheduled for after the event. Capsule's not in service right now unless it's life or death." "Good to know," I said. "What happens if one fails during ascent?" She finally looked up. "It won't fail. If it does, we're not going up." Dinner that night ran clean. Sato was the chef. He didn't speak much, but the food came out polished and fast. 8 courses in total, all small, high-end plating, paired wines, and a level of attention that felt out of place underground. Clark, one of the investors seated near me, talked through most of the second half of the meal. He was the loud type. Big projections, multi-phase expansion plans, talk of securing permits to build 2 more complexes near the trench edge farther out. People listened, but no one responded. Toward the end of the dinner, someone at a nearby table started coughing hard. He was tall, brown sport coat, maybe mid-50s. I hadn't caught his name during the welcome. His voice cracked when he tried to excuse himself. Nobody made a scene. The couple next to him just pulled their chairs a little farther apart. He left early, said something about the air feeling dry. Later that night, after walking the loop one last time, I went back to my suite and tried to write. I keep notes when I travel, especially for technical tours. Mostly specs, impressions, numbers. I just started writing down my rough estimate of the air handling capacity when I felt a faint pulse run under the floor. Not a full shake, just a single vibration that rolled through the structure and stopped. 10 minutes later, a low-frequency alarm pulsed through the ceiling. Short, not repeating, then silence. I waited, but nothing else came. A second pulse followed, lighter than the first. I pulled on a jacket, stepped back out into the tunnel, and followed the main path to the control pod. The lights dipped once on my way there, not enough to cut out, just a drop in current. When I reached the entrance, Mina was already there, headset on, flipping through camera feeds. She didn't look surprised to see me. "Fire on the barge," she said before I asked. "Engine room. One of the welders cracked a valve during a tool test. Foam system triggered. Nobody injured, but the engine controls are offline. They'll have to tow it for repairs." "What's that mean for us?" She glanced toward a screen showing the vertical cable feeds. "Right now it means elevator cars are grounded until morning. We're running on local power and internal air scrubbers. Umbilical trunks holding pressure, but we've cut feed to the main compressors just in case." On the monitor, I saw the external compressor feed marked offline. The bar was red. Internal compressor was stable. Scrubber 1 online. Scrubber 2 still marked as pending maintenance. "You're not worried?" She didn't answer for a second. Then she said, "Not yet." The next morning, we were supposed to leave. Departure window was 10 o'clock. Everyone showed up for breakfast except the man in the sport coat. Clark said he went back to bed, said he was feeling sick, maybe caught something on the flight. No one asked more than once. I ate fast and light, then walked to the control pod to see if the elevator cars were moving. Mina was there with Karim. The main display showed the surface barge icon grayed out and the elevator status bar locked in standby. Power looked fine inside the habitat. Air numbers looked steady. The outside camera feeds were clear enough to make out the hotel's support legs and a haze of sand moving along the seafloor. "Any word from port control?" I asked. Karim shook his head and tapped a VHF panel. Automated IDs only. No live voice since 8 o'clock. Mina switched a feed to a grainy shot of the surface. The barge sat tilted a few degrees to port. Foam still clung to the edges of the deck where the engine room intake vents were. A small tug was tied off the stern. No one moved on either deck. "Transport's delayed," Mina said. "We'll hold guests here through lunch and reassess." That sounded reasonable. Still, the absence of simple human radio chatter put a weight on the room. I tried a casual tone and failed. "That man who was coughing, anyone check on him?" "Suite 1A, Kareem said. "I brought water at 7:45. He answered the door, looked rough, said he needed sleep." "Let me know if he needs a medic," Mina added. "All we have is basic kit, but we can monitor vitals." I left them to it and walked the loop. The restaurant buzz had faded. Guests loitered in pairs, did slow laps in the tunnels, and pressed their foreheads close to the acrylic like kids in an aquarium. A few took pictures again. The water outside had that calm, slow sway you get on a mild day. No drama. That almost made the silence worse. At 11:30, 2 staff knocked on suite doors and told everyone lunch would be served at 12:15. The usual stuff, small plates. No one looked excited. I grabbed a quick shower and changed shirts. When I came out, I saw Elena and Mark near the spa pod entrance. She had the stiff posture of someone trying not to show frustration. He kept checking the time on his watch like it mattered. "You think we're stuck here overnight?" she asked. "Probably not," I said. "Barge had a fire. They need to run inspections. It slows everything down." Mark forced a smile. "We paid to be first. Guess we are." "Being first is not always the prize you think it is," I said. That landed, and he let the smile drop. Lunch came out late. Sato looked pale and unfocused, and his left hand was wrapped in a thicker bandage than last night. He moved cautiously, like the room tilted. He plated 2 courses, wiped the counter twice without looking where the cloth went, and finally stepped away mid-service. One of the servers slid into his spot and kept things moving. Clark showed up halfway through the meal and started pushing for answers in that loud, cheerful tone that sounds friendly until you hear the words. He wanted transport estimates, and he wanted a manager to commit to a number. The manager tried to keep it smooth, said he was waiting on the tug captain, said security was coordinating. None of it felt like a lie. It felt like the truth plus a lot of empty space. After lunch, I took a walk toward the guest pods. Suite 1A's door was closed. I stood there long enough to feel like a creep, then knocked. No answer. I put my ear near the seam and heard nothing. No water, no movement, no cough. Not good. I backed away and almost ran into Mina. She had nitrile gloves bulging from a back pocket and a small medkit in her left hand. "You were going to knock again," she said. "Yeah." She pressed the chime, waited a few seconds, pressed again. Still nothing. She keyed in a staff override on the panel. The door slid halfway, hesitated, and then completed the cycle with a soft clunk. The room lights triggered to full brightness. The bed was unmade. The bathroom door was open. The man in the sport coat sat on the floor between the bed and the wall, like he had tried to stand and missed. His head was tilted back against the mattress edge. His eyes were open and glassy. His lower face was wet. His chest did not move. Mina did not step in right away. She watched the shoulders. Nothing. She took a breath and went to one knee, checked carotid, checked for any air on a mirror from the kit. She kept her voice flat. No pulse, no breath, call time. I glanced around for a note or a phone. Nothing obvious. I told her I would get help, but she shook her head. "Stay. I need a witness for chain of custody on his effects." She said it like she had said it in training a few times. We noted the position of his body, the time, and the presence of a water glass on the side table. She did a quick check for medication bottles or visible injuries. I noticed a bruise along his jawline. Not from impact. More like someone who had been coughing hard for a long time. His skin had a dull, settled tone that does not look like sleep. "Cause?" I asked. "Unknown," she said. "We are not equipped to call that. We need to secure him and clear the room." We moved him carefully. She directed. I lifted. He was heavier than I expected, like every joint did not want to bend. We used a rolling service stretcher from the corridor and a sheet. She told me to keep the sheet away from my face. I did. We wheeled him down to the spa pod because it had the coldest room and the tightest door. Kareem met us with a plastic sign and tape. He wrote a time and date with a blunt marker and stuck it on the door after we closed it. Back in control, Mina logged the death with the manager and told him no one was to open the spa cold room without her. Period. The manager did not argue. He looked stunned and nodded like he was trying to remember a script. Clark cornered him within minutes. Demanded to know if the man had been screened before boarding. Demanded to know why there was no doctor on site. The manager tried to talk and failed twice. He finally said, "We followed our protocol. We will cooperate with authorities." It sounded thin in the quiet. That evening, the surface picture got worse. The tug that had been tied to the barge had slipped its line. It still sat near the stern, but there was no movement on deck. No radio. Port control channels went down to recorded IDs only. No one was answering the hospitality channel at all. Around 19 o'clock, Mina pulled Sato off the line. He did not argue. He could barely stand. His bandage had a brown edge that had not been there at lunch. She ordered him to the staff passage to rest, told him to keep the door closed, and told the manager the kitchen was going to a reduced menu. Guests did not complain. Appetite was gone. I stayed near control with Kareem. We took turns walking short loops. I kept waiting to hear sirens over the VHF from shore or a helicopter rotor. Nothing. Just the faint sound of water shifting past the acrylic and the occasional push from the structure as a swell passed overhead. I went back to my suite around 21:30 and laid down without sleeping. At 2:15, the structure gave a hard shudder that lifted me off the mattress by a finger's width. A series of short alarms popped once, then died. I pulled on pants and a shirt and stepped out into the tunnel. Lights were steady, but you could feel the floor crouch and relax like something tugged at the legs below. I jogged to control. Mina and Kareem were already there. Umbilical trunk took a hit, Mina said. A mooring line parted up top and jerked the cable assembly. We lost main power feed and external air. We are fully local now. Can we still ride up in the elevator? I asked. Not without a surface crew. Car is parked topside. We are not moving it blind. She worked down a list on her tablet with short, sharp taps. Internal compressor running. Scrubber 1 online. Scrubber 2 still flagged for a belt swap. Batteries fully charged. Lights were trimmed down to save load. She looked up and caught my eye. We finished the punch list now, not tomorrow. I nodded. No argument in me. We waited until 5 to inform guests, so we did not spark panic in the dark. At 6:30, the manager gathered everyone in the restaurant and delivered a tight briefing. He said the surface incident had damaged the barge and communications, but systems below were stable. He said breakfast service would be simple. He said we expected recovery crews by afternoon. Clark scoffed. Eleanor stared at the tabletop and moved a thumbnail back and forth along a seam. Mark asked for a phone signal like a person asking for rain. Sato did not come out. The assistant chef said he had a fever and was sleeping it off. Mina told him to keep Sato isolated until she could check him again. She handed Kareem a list and told him to prep the maintenance trunk for a belt swap. Then she looked at me. I need a second set of hands. You already know the layout. Can you clip a line and hold a light? I can do more than hold a light, I said. Good, she said. Then you can also read torque values and not drop hardware. We geared up in the service dock. Not scuba. This was not a dive. The maintenance trunk had standing water from an unfinished drainage line and a small flooded section near the blower panel. We wore short wetsuits, full face masks for comms, gloves, a chest light, and a short line with a locking clip. Kareem double-checked the clips and handed me a small sealed case with the belt kit and 2 spare bolts. Mina carried the tool roll. We opened the maintenance hatch and eased into the trunk. Water rose past my shins and up to my waist. It was cold, not shocking. The sound was close and strange, like every movement had a plastic echo. We moved slow. The floor was gridded metal with a slight batter to one side. My left boot slid once. I corrected and planted the clip's tether on a rail at hip height, then clipped my waistline to it. Mina reached the blower panel and checked the housing with the back of her hand to feel for vibration. "Dead," she said. She looked over her shoulder. "Light." I leaned in and aimed the beam where she pointed. She opened the panel with 2 turns on a pair of latches, folded it down, and exposed the belt run. The belt had frayed at one edge. The pulley alignment was a hair off. She loosened the tensioner, slipped the old belt free, and handed it back to me without looking. I bagged it and passed her the new one. She threaded it with practiced hands, seated it, and set the tension by feel, then by the gauge on the tensioner screw. "Mark that," she said, and I read the number aloud and tapped it into my head twice. She tightened the lock nut, then stepped back. "Power up," she said into her mask. Kareem must have been on the breaker, because the blower kicked a second later. The trunk's air shifted as the system drew. Mina watched the run for 1 full minute, eyes on the belt for any shimmy. "Call it," she said. "Good," I replied. "No lateral walk, no heat rise." We backed out slow, unclipped, dried off, and stepped into the service dock. Kareem had a towel and a clipboard. He logged the time and the reading. Mina peeled off her gloves, wiped her face, and pointed at the ascent capsule's lower cradle. "Next," she said. "We swap the dog. I do not launch that pod with a flagged clamp." I followed her to the crate, cut the seal, and lifted out the replacement assembly. It was heavy for the size. 4 bolts, a locking pin, a short cable run to a sensor. The exterior access to the dog housing required another short flooded space and an open hatch to the bay that sat against open water. We would not be fully outside, but there would be a direct line to the sea for a few minutes. She did not blink. We suited up the same way, clipped lines, and opened the exterior maintenance hatch. Water pushed in with a steady sheet, not a blast. The current was light. We timed our movement to keep the hatch as closed as possible while still giving room to work. Kareem brought the ROV online and parked it outside the bay grating with a strobe and a beeper singing a steady high tone. I could see the flash through the water like a camera blink. We reached the dog housing. I held the light. Mina backed out the 4 bolts by quarter turns in a cross pattern, then pulled the locking pin and eased the unit clear with both hands, fingers curled tight around the edges. I slid the new assembly in place and held it while she threaded the bolts. The first 2 went in smooth. The third stuck a millimeter proud and fought her. She reset the angle and worked it down. The 4th caught with a soft click. She talked in sequence and called out the number for the log. I repeated it. Something touched my boot. Not a hard hit, a drag. I tilted my light down and saw pale fingers push past the grating from outside the bay. The hand slid, pressed, and withdrew. Mina did not look up. She tightened the last bolt, fitted the sensor cable, and locked the pin. I felt another light bump near my shin. Kareem's voice came over the mask comm. "ROV shows 2 contacts near the fairing. They are drifting. No active swim." I swallowed and kept my body still. The water swirled and flattened as the ROV drifted a few meters off. The beeper worked like bait. 2 shapes turned towards it and followed the strobe by inches. Mina pressed the housing cover, locked it, and tapped twice. "Done," she said. "Back inside." We sealed the hatch and drained the maintenance space. The water line dropped with a slurp and a hiss. My hands shook a little while I unbuckled the line. I kept the movement tight so it did not show. Mina checked the dog indicators on the capsule cradle. 3 green windows. She nodded once, a small, tight motion, then looked up at me. "We have a clean exit when we need it," she said. "Let us not use it too early." When we stepped back into the main tunnel, Kareem met us with his eyes wide but calm. "You need to see this," he said. He led us to the spar pod door. A dull thump sounded from inside the cold room. Not a soft settle. A blunt hit, again and again, with a slow count between impacts. Eleanor stood a few steps back with both hands locked on her own elbows. Mark stood in front of her like a short wall that would not stop anything. "Who is in there?" Elena asked. She knew, but she wanted someone else to say it. Mina answered plainly. "The man from 1A." Another hit landed. The door flexed forward a fraction and returned. The latch held. Kareem set his palms on the door frame and leaned in just enough to test the frame. "Hinges are fine," he said. "Back away," Mina told everyone. "No one touches this door. We do not open it. We do not go near the edge where fingers can grab." She looked at me. "Get the manager. Tell him the cold room is quarantined. Use that word." I did exactly that. The manager turned grey when I said it. He started to argue and caught himself. He said he would inform guests that the spa was closed due to maintenance and that all services were suspended. He did not ask questions about the sound behind the door. Maybe he could not process it. Maybe he chose not to. Clark heard anyway. Word spreads faster than any official notice. He marched down the tunnel with 2 guests trailing behind him and got right up in Mina's space until Kareem took a half step forward. Clark pointed at the door and demanded to know what was going on. Mina kept her voice level and told him the man was not to be disturbed and that the door would remain sealed. Clark raised his hands like he was about to push his luck and then thought better. He backed off an inch at a time. We fell into a rhythm after that. Kareem cycled the ROV around the exterior of the habitat every hour and called out any moving shapes. The beeper on the ROV drew attention away from the service dock grating whenever it came close. Inside, the air numbers stayed decent, now that Scrubber 2 was running. My head felt clearer than it had before the swap. That told me the readout was not lying. In the late afternoon, Mina and I did a full check on the ascent capsule. We practiced the launch sequence with the door open and the clamps engaged. We set seats, checked the manual ballast pump, tested the beacon, and read the battery range. 6 to 8 hours on avionics, more if we cut the internal lighting and comms. Enough to reach shore if the sea cooperated, and if we were not forced to drift. Those ifs did not feel great, but they were better than guessing. Sato did not answer the staff passage when Mina knocked at 17 o'clock. She keyed in the override and found the room empty, sheets twisted, one bloody wrap on the floor near the sink. She froze for half a second, then moved, checked the bathroom, checked the ceiling hatch, checked behind the storage panel. Nothing. She locked the door behind us and wrote the time and location on tape across the handle. We split the next hour into short, tight tasks. Kareem kept the ROV moving and checked every grate and leg for any sign of a person outside. I walked the tunnels on a slow loop and listened for footsteps or voices where they did not belong. Mina talked to the manager about rationing, not because we were running out of food, but because keeping the kitchen quiet reduced heat and helped the scrubbers. He agreed to cold plates and bottled water only. No one complained. People just stared and listened for sounds behind doors. At dusk, something changed in the way the habitat sounded. Not a structural shift, more like a distant, slow tap traveling through the frame from the spa side. The cold room door took 3 heavier hits in a row. The latch held, but the noise reached farther down the tunnel and pulled people toward it. Mina posted Kareem at the corner with instructions to turn anyone away who drifted too close. He did it with a steady hand and a voice that left clean, simple footprints. "Not safe here. Please step back." Clark came back with a new plan. He wanted the wet bell lock opened so he could take a surface swim in the rescue rig. He had a small amount of dive experience and enough money to assume that counted for everything. Mina shut that down immediately. "No one goes out into open water in a current with no surface support," she said. "You will not come back." He tried to push past her in the tunnel. She shifted her stance and did not move. It was not a heroic scene. It was 2 adults standing in a corridor at the bottom of the sea, looking at each other while a door thumped in the background. Clark held her eyes, then looked away and spoke into the air. "You are overstepping," he said. "This is not a prison." "It is a sealed environment," she said. "That is not a negotiation." He left in a line of anger so tight you could have traced it on the floor. Eleanor watched him go with her mouth set hard. Mark slipped an arm around her shoulders and kept her anchored in place. At 21:30, Kareem's ROV spotted a body outside the wet bell. The camera feed showed a figure in soft pants and a chef's jacket drifted up against a ladder rung, and then away as the ROV's strobe blinked. The jacket sleeve had a dark bandage at the wrist. Sato. He hung there in the slow sway of the water, turned, and put one palm flat against the acrylic. He did not swim. He did not look like he breathed. He moved only when the water moved him. The ROV beeper drew him a meter off the grating and then another meter. He followed it with the patience of a creature that had time. We did not speak for a few seconds after the feed ended. Mina let out a slow exhale that sounded like dust leaving a filter. Then she said, "We launch tomorrow." No one argued. The plan was direct. Morning systems check at 7. One more ROV sweep to draw anything away from the service dock. Lock guests to 5 seats and assign positions. Last seat reserved in case we found a living person in a corridor. Battery check. Beacon armed. Ballast pump tested. Dogs verified green. Equalize. Open. Release. Ascend. No speeches. No ceremony. We slept in shifts. I took the late watch with Kareem. He set a timer and pinged the ROV every 15 minutes to keep any floaters following the light show instead of gathering at the pod. I walked loops and drank water slowly, not because I was thirsty, but because my mouth would not stay wet. At 4:30, the spa cold room went silent. That silence felt worse than the pounding. We did not open the door to check. If it failed on its own, we would hear it. It did not. It held. At 6:30, we woke the guests. No one argued that part. The talkers were quiet. The quiet ones were quieter. Eleanor and Mark packed backpacks with water, a change of socks, and a folded towel each like it could influence the day. Clark carried nothing. He wore a fresh shirt that looked wrong in this place. The manager handed out wrist straps for the capsule so no one would float off a seat if we took a rough tilt on the way up. He forgot his own until Mina pointed. He slipped it on with a short, embarrassed nod. We met in the service dock at 7:45. The capsule sat ready on the cradle, paint clean, window clear, clamps set. Mina walked around it once more and checked every indicator window. She did not trust the idea of a quick glance. She leaned in so close her nose almost touched the glass and verified the position of each dog's locking tooth. She had me read the checklist out loud and tap each line with a finger as I spoke. It kept my voice steady. Kareem ran one last ROV loop outside the dock and lit up the area near the habitat legs with the strobe and the beeper. A pale face drifted into view on the camera and followed the light. Another hand appeared and pressed the grating near the fairing. The ROV moved off a few meters and the shapes went with it like boats following a tow. He held them in a gentle curve away from our side of the dock and then parked the ROV near a barnacled crossbeam. "Launch window is open," Kareem said. "Do not waste it." We assigned seats. Mina took the panel. I took the manual ballast pump. Kareem took the beacon and the service kit. Elena and Mark took the 2 rear seats to keep them together. The 6th seat stayed empty because we did not have anyone else to fill it. Mina asked twice to be sure. No answer from any corridor. No one stepped out waving. That was that. Mina closed the capsule door and checked the seal. Kareem read out the pressure. 1 atmosphere. Panel showed green across power, ballast and release indicators. I set my hand on the pump handle and waited without moving it. The service dock equalization cycle started. Water rose around the capsule up to the marked line on the inner wall and held. The sound was dense and full, like a big room filling with a hose. The pressure equalized, and the panel beeped once. "Release dogs," Mina said. She threw the switch. All 3 indicators dropped from locked to free. The dogs retracted with a soft metallic pop that I felt through the seat more than heard. The capsule shifted half an inch left and stopped, then lifted a little as the cradle lost grip. There was a brief rub along the sidewall as we moved off the mounting guides, and then nothing under us but water. We rose slow at first, then faster as the guidance cable fed us toward the vertical. The dock wall fell away in the window and turned into a blue-gray field with drifting particles. Something thumped the hull once. Not heavy, a palm maybe. Then it slid past and disappeared. Elena kept both hands flat on her thighs and stared hard at the panel like she could keep the numbers from changing. Mark watched her instead of the window. "Guide cable clear," Mina said a minute later. She watched a thin needle on the panel slide past a mark and then pressed 2 switches. Free ascent. The light changed from dim blue to a brighter, thin grey. The capsule tilted half a degree, corrected, and then steadied. We said nothing for the next 30 seconds. It felt like a long elevator ride, with more water and no elevator music. Then the surface hit us with a slap of brightness that made my eyes water. The capsule bobbed and settled. Outside the window, the sky was a washed-out sheet, the water a chopped, dark field with white edges. Dubai's shoreline barely showed through murk and smoke. The support barge sat a few hundred meters away, down by the stern, foam still crusted along the deck bins. No crew on deck. The tug was tied off but floating wrong, like someone had left it without caring where it went. Kareem popped the beacon and it began to blink a steady sequence. He switched the VHF to a general emergency channel and broadcast a clear distress call with our position and status. He repeated it 3 times before letting go of the transmit switch. The radio answered with static and a handful of voices, all far away, none of them coordinated. A small, rigid, inflatable boat drifted out from the barge's shadow with no one aboard. It bumped our hull twice like a lazy animal, and then fell off with a soft clack as the wind turned it. Mina grabbed a boat hook from the capsule's kit and snagged the rib's loop. She pulled it close while I steadied her. We passed a painter through the ring and tied the rib to the capsule so we would not lose either. "Transfer?" I asked. "Do it," she said. "We move faster with a motor if it runs. Keep the capsule on the tether so the beacon stays with us." We moved from the capsule to the rib one at a time, over the rail, low and careful. The outboard turned on the second pull, which felt like a small miracle I did not name out loud. The fuel gauge showed a half tank, good enough to pick a direction and commit. "Where?" Mark asked. "Jebel Ali?" "Warehouses mean supplies," Mina said. "But that port is complex and hard to enter blind. The Palm has defensible shoreline and fewer approaches, but you can get trapped by walls and gates. Open water buys us time and space, but it is a longer bet with fuel." Kareem kept scanning the horizon through a salt-streaked pair of binoculars. "I want to see one living boat before we aim for a port," he said. "Any boat. Then we shadow it. Herd instinct. Better than rolling into a dead harbor alone." Clark pointed at the shoreline and set his jaw like a compass needle. "We go in now. Waiting out here is a bad joke." I watched the water around us while they talked. Debris drifted by in quiet lines. A foam cooler lid, a cracked plastic crate, a length of rope with a torn float at one end. The ocean had the steady lift and drop of a mild day, but it lacked the usual boat traffic. No fishing boats, no ferries, no jet skis buzzing in lazy circles. The absence scraped at my head. "Pick one," I said. "We burn fuel whether we move or not." Mina set her jaw and pointed off the bow. "We run a wide arc toward the Palm. We do not touch the main channels unless we see a clear path. If we sight smoke or movement that looks like a fight, we turn wide and slide off." No one loved it. No one had a better plan. I moved to the engine and eased the throttle. The rib bit the water and pulled the capsule by the painter in a long tug. The beacon blinked behind us at a neat pace. The barge fell away. The hotel below us was out of sight, but I could feel its presence like a weight on the water that had not moved in years. I stared ahead and held the line the way Mina called it. We skirted the barge and gave the tug a wide berth. A body hung half over the tug's stern rail. I did not point it out. No one needed it. As we cleared the shadow of both vessels, the shoreline widened. The city looked wrong in this light. Buildings were there, but the shine was gone. Patches of smoke lifted off 2 low structures near the waterfront. The cranes in the distance were still. Kareem tuned the VHF through a few working channels. An automated beacon repeated a distress acknowledgement in clipped English and Arabic on one frequency. A human voice cut in and out on another, reporting a roadblock near a mall, then vanished under a wave of static. Every time a voice came through, Eleanor and Mark leaned toward the radio like they could will it louder. Clark stared ahead and said nothing. His face had stopped broadcasting opinions. We made the outer marker buoys near the Palm just before midday. The current set us north a little, so I corrected with a feather of throttle. I kept the speed moderate to avoid dragging the capsule too hard. We could cut it loose if the line snagged, but I did not want to lose the beacon unless we had to. A small center console boat appeared off our port bow, riding low and moving slow. 3 figures stood close together under the shade. One held a long object that could have been a gaff or a firearm. No flag, no radio hail. The boat altered course toward us by degrees. "Hold course," Mina said. She took the binoculars from Karim and glassed them. "No visible lights, no siren, no uniforms. We do not need that meeting." I gave the engine a little more and pulled our line wider. The center console tracked us for a minute and then peeled off, interested in someone else or nothing at all. My shoulders dropped a fraction. I did not notice until they did it on their own. Near the breakwater, Min-A raised a hand. "Cut speed," she said. "We need to check the channel. If anything blocks it, we will not have room to turn inside." We idled while Karim scanned. The water in the channel looked calm, but busy with floating rubbish. A capsized jet ski spun slowly near a marker. No patrols, no harbormaster boat, no harbor sound beyond the wind and the slap of small waves against stone. "Back off," Mina said after a long look. "We are not going into a cul-de-sac with one exit. We run the outside edge north and look for an open beach or a small pier with clear land behind it. No crowds." Clark finally spoke. "I did not sign up to camp on a beach like a student," he said. Mina turned enough to make eye contact. "You did not sign up for any of this," she said, "and yet here we are." He shut up and looked away. We followed the outer arc and found a narrow stretch of sand with a concrete staircase that led to a low wall and a line of villas behind it. The villas looked empty. No lights, no movement, no vehicles in sight. It was as good as anything. We nosed the rib in and let the capsule bump the stern once before I killed the engine. We jumped out, pulled the rib up 2 meters on the sand, and dragged the capsule's painter higher so the beacon would sit above the next small surge. "Fast recon," Mina said. 2 minutes. I want eyes over that wall. No one wanders." Karim and I climbed the steps while Elena and Mark held the rib. Clark stood by the capsule and looked at his shoes like he had never stepped on sand in his life. The top of the wall gave us a clear view of the villa row. Courtyard gates stood closed but not locked. Plants in the planters were dry and yellowing. One front door stood open with a small rug folded wrong under the edge. No glass. No overturned furniture on the patio. No drag marks. "Left house first," I said. "Open door says, we are not the first." We moved along the wall and slipped through the open gate. The courtyard smelled like dust and old air. I called out once. The house swallowed the sound and gave nothing back. We stepped inside and kept our hands out where anyone watching could see we were empty. The entry hall led to a living room with a view of the water. Cabinets were closed. A glass sat on the counter with a rim of white on the side where water had dried. A staircase climbed to the 2nd floor. We cleared the ground floor fast, room by room, hearts on low boil, but not boiling over. The 2nd floor had 2 bedrooms and a small office. Beds were unmade but clean. A phone charger lay on the nightstand with nothing attached. A closet hung half full of clothes. Whoever left did it fast but not panicked. Back outside, we waved Mina up. She led Eleanor and Mark through the gate while Clark dragged his feet. We did another sweep with them behind us, slower this time, and picked a room to stage in. Mina closed the door and wedged a chair under the handle, then looked at me. "We hold for 1 hour," she said. "We need to think before we run again." We took stock, food in the rib, bottled water and a few wrapped bars from the capsule kit. In the house, dry goods in a pantry, small stove, power dead. Bathroom had clean towels and a small first aid kit with basic bandages and 2 pain reliever packets. On the street behind the villa row, no vehicles moved, no voices. The silence invited bad guesses, so we did not fill it. After 20 minutes of quiet, a noise came from 2 houses down. The sound was not loud. A soft bump, then a door creak. We all froze, then moved together in a line without talking. Mina raised a hand to hold position and peered over the courtyard wall. A woman stood in the doorway in a thin robe. She stared across the courtyard like the air hurt her eyes. Her mouth hung open a fraction. Her head turned in small clicks. "Alive?" Elena whispered. We watched for breathing. The woman took a step and dragged one foot. Her hands hung loose. Her eyes did not settle on anything. She stepped over the threshold and bumped the door with her shoulder, then took another step and caught the wall with her palm. She did not call for help. She did not react when a bird flapped up from the courtyard planter. I had seen that look through the ROV when Sato pressed his hand to the acrylic. There was no need to say it out loud. Mina motioned us back from the wall with 2 fingers. We eased away and returned to our room. She shut the door and set the chair back under the handle. "We move," she said. "Now. We take what we can carry. We get back to the water and run north until we see real signs of order. If we cannot find that, we keep distance from everyone." Clark wanted to argue. He started, then looked at Elena's face and chose not to. Mark nodded before Mina finished. We moved fast. Water, bars, towels, first aid. Nothing heavy. No souvenirs. We left the house exactly as we found it and stepped back into the courtyard. The woman in the robe had moved halfway to the wall. She turned her head and looked in our direction, but her eyes did not lock onto us. Her mouth worked like she was trying to remember how to shape a word. No sound came out. We cleared the gate, dropped to the sand, and shoved the rib back off the beach. The capsule tugged behind like a dog that did not want to leave a porch. I turned the engine and aimed the bow away from the villas and the harbor and pointed us along the outer arc again. No one looked back for long. There was nothing helpful in that view. The run north felt longer than the numbers would show on a map. The shoreline slid by in drained colors. Roadways near the water were empty, then crowded with stalled cars, then empty again. Smoke rose from 3 places I could name if I were on land. I kept my head down and let Mina call the small course changes. Kareem worked the radio every 5 minutes and wrote down every voice we heard with a line about direction and content, even when the words were just fragments. It kept his mind straight. It kept mine straight to hear him do it. Mid-afternoon, a larger vessel appeared offshore. A long, low container ship riding strange at anchor with what looked like heat shimmer on the stern. As we coasted past its distant line, the radio picked up a looped message from a coast station farther down the coast, acknowledging emergency beacons without offering actual help. Good to know the repeaters still had power. Not good in any other way. Fuel dropped. The gauge dipped below a quarter and made every decision tight. We needed a refuel point, which meant a marina with storage, or a working gas station near a small pier, and a hose long enough to do something ugly and efficient. Mina did the math out loud and then stopped herself. She did not want to set a number and watch us fail it. She pointed instead. "Small marina ahead. If the main gate is blocked and no one guards it, we go in and out fast. If it is guarded, we back off." The marina entrance was half closed by a stuck swing gate. The other half was open enough for us to slip in single file. We idled through and kept the capsule on a short tether so it did not snag. Docks were empty. Lines hung slack. One gull sat on a railing and watched us without fear. The fuel dock had a card reader that blinked a dead red light. No staff. No locks. We tied off and tested the pump. The handle clicked without resistance. Power was out. "Manual pump?" I asked. Mina scanned the dock and found the emergency bypass station. 2 turns on a recessed valve and a long handle ready to work a diaphragm pump by hand. She handed the handle to Clark. He grimaced like he had never used a tool in his life, then started pumping. It took effort. His face went red. He kept at it. Fuel crept into our tank at a slow, honest pace. We rotated the job every few minutes. Eleanor took a turn and surprised all of us with how hard she could push when it mattered. Halfway through the fill, a sound came from the far end of the dock. Footsteps, slow, dragging. We stopped breathing and listened. The steps reached the corner and then paused. A man in a soaked shirt and board shorts turned into view and saw us. His eyes lit with a dull recognition that meant nothing. He walked down the dock with a stiff gait and held one arm at a strange angle. His mouth opened and closed. No words. "Leave the hose," Mina said. "Untie." We did not run. We moved quickly and without noise. Clark put the handle down and backed away. I closed the fuel cap and tossed the line into the boat. Karim slipped the painter free. Elena pushed us off with a steady shove that did not rock the dock. The man reached the fuel pump and bumped it with his hip. He did not change course to follow us or call out. He just kept moving in a line that would have taken him into the water if the dock had ended 3 steps sooner. We cleared the marina and turned east to buy space. The engine tone sounded smoother with the extra fuel. It lifted us across the chop without complaint. The sun tilted down and stretched shadows along the water. We had maybe 2 hours of good light left, enough to find one more safe place to tie off and think. Mina tapped my shoulder and pointed at an old service pier jutting off a low industrial stretch of shoreline. No houses, no crowds, just a concrete slab and a set of bollards with peeling paint. We pulled alongside, tied off, and sat for a minute just listening. The city made no friendly noise. The wind tugged at a torn banner that had half fallen into the water. The sound of fabric on concrete was tiny and constant. We set a simple watch and shared a few sips of water each. No one pretended this was a picnic. We did not know what we were tomorrow, but we were not hotel guests anymore. Mina sketched a map on the inside of a cardboard wrapper and marked our route from the abyssal crown to the barge, around the palm, up the coast, into the marina, and to this pier. She wrote times next to each and underlined the fuel point. Karim logged the radio calls. Automated acknowledgement at 12:57. Human voice near mall reporting roadblock at 13:12. No follow-up. Short burst at 14:48 with coordinates I could not confirm. He tapped the log and looked at me. At least we are not alone in the noise. Clark sat with his back to a piling and stared at the water. He looked tired. The edge of him had dulled. The anger that kept him upright earlier had slipped away and left a heavy quiet in its place. He met my eye once and did not flinch. "I was wrong about the wet bell," he said. "I would not have made it 100 feet. "No one would," I said. "Currents take what they want." Elena leaned against Mark and closed her eyes for a full minute. When she opened them again, she had the alert, focused look of someone who has accepted a job she did not want. She spoke in a plain voice. "We need a plan for night," she said, "and another for dawn." Mina nodded. "Night plan is simple. No lights. No engine unless we have to move. We sleep in shifts. 2 on, 2 off. 1 floater who does not sleep deep. At dawn, we run for the next working repeater tower and try a longer broadcast. If that fails, we head for a small inlet with 1 road in and out. Fewer approaches mean fewer surprises." We agreed without arguments. There was nothing left to argue about. We bedded down in the RIB and on the pier with jackets over shoulders, and the capsule tied close enough that its beacon could be reached by hand. I took the first watch with Karim. He sat with the radio on low volume and scanned the dark like his eyes could pull signal out of it. I watched the water and counted to 60, and then started again. At some point in the night, a set of faint engine noises passed offshore, too far to call, too close to ignore. We held still and let it pass. The water slapped wood in a slow, steady rhythm. The city lights stayed mostly dead, with small pockets of generator glow that came and went. There were no sirens, no aircraft, no friendly horn from a harbor pilot. The quiet soaked into everything and stayed. Dawn came with a thin light that made everything look flat. We stood slow and stretched cold muscles. The capsule beacon winked with the same patience it had at the surface. Nothing had changed, and everything had changed. Mina looked at the line of the shore and then at me. "Pick our first 3 tasks," she said. "Say them out loud." I did not have to think long. Fuel check, water inventory, broadcast a long-range call with coordinates and movement direction. "Good," she said. "Do them." We went down the list. Fuel levels read higher than expected. Either the dock gauge was wrong, or the manual pump pushed more than we thought. Water was still low. We pooled everything we had. 5 sealed bottles, a half-full jug from the capsule, and what remained in the small tank under the rib seat. It would last a day or two if we rationed tight. Not more. Kareem keyed the radio again. He broadcast a long-range call, gave coordinates, repeated it 3 times, then waited. The only thing that came back was a partial word buried in static. A vessel name maybe, but nothing we recognized. After that, just a burst of distortion and a broken ping. He wrote it down like always. Same handwriting, same deliberate strokes. But the look on his face had changed. He didn't say it out loud, but I could read the silence between us. Whoever sent that signal, if it was real, was either too far away to help or too busy to care. Mina gave a short nod and pulled the rope from the cleat. She didn't speak again until we were drifting. We do not wait. We move until we hit something useful. That was the plan. Simple, direct. Maybe the only kind of plan that still worked. The rib turned north, nose cutting through the water like it was still morning, like the last 2 days hadn't happened. The city unrolled beside us in slow, broken pieces. Nothing moved on the highway that hugged the shoreline. Billboards hung half-lit. Marina towers looked frozen in place, not empty, but watching. I kept one hand on the throttle, eyes locked forward. I watched for wakes that didn't belong, and shapes that broke the water wrong. Nothing showed. Nothing followed. Mina scanned through binoculars and stayed quiet. Kareem logged our heading, battery draw, fuel levels, water remaining. He worked the checklist because that was how we stayed sane. Eleanor and Mark whispered between themselves now and then, but mostly they just stared, out at the sea, back toward the skyline, at nothing. Behind us, the abyssal crown was gone from view, but I still saw it in my head. The tunnel junctions, the cold room door, the pressure clamps, the last service light flickering before we cut out. I pictured the slow, weightless turn of bodies that weren't bodies anymore. I pictured their palms brushing the acrylic and leaving no mark. We didn't say it, but we all knew there was no going back. Whatever that place was meant to be, it had become something else. A capsule of silence under the sea. For the next few hours, we kept moving. Coastline shifted, landmarks faded. We passed a wrecked sailboat tangled in floating netting. The mast was split. No flag, no blood, just abandonment. Then, around late morning, Kareem caught something on the radio. Just a pulse, not voice, not a proper distress tone. Just a narrowband signal, short, repeatable, same interval. He turned the volume down and leaned into it. Mina adjusted course without needing more. I followed her eyes to the horizon, where a cluster of low structures sat half buried in glare. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep these stories alive. And a huge thank you to everyone supporting the channel with extra memberships, especially the Scouts. Garnet, Bianca, Darkwing Duck, Day S, Erica Leah, Geordie Ray, Sharon Hernandez, Barbara Rademacher, Jay Dalla, Sociable Knot. Also drop a comment and let me know what story you want to hear next. Until next time, Survivor. Jack's Nightmares signing off.